Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you for everybody who is here today. I am very grateful for the privilege of rising today to speak on behalf of the people of Oromocto, Lincoln, Fredericton. Before I get started, Mr. Speaker, I would love to take this opportunity to once again congratulate our UNB women's and men's hockey teams. As we all know, the UNB Reds are the AUS women's hockey champions after defeating the St. FX X-Women 3-2 in a thrilling double overtime game in front of a record-breaking crowd at the Aiken Centre recently. And of course, the UNB men's team defeated the Alberta Golden Bears 3-0 on March the 19th in the championship final of the 18 tournament in Charlottetown, PEI. That would be 8 national titles, Mr. Speaker, in the last 16 years, all under PEI's Gardner McDougall. So we can never celebrate that enough. So of course, post-secondary education is important to my family as well. As I mentioned yesterday, my husband was 46 years old when he went to the University of New Brunswick. So it's never too late to get an education. It's always fun to change your career. It was wonderful to be a part of that team with my husband where we supported each other through those years. And my children as well attended different universities and colleges. My son was attending Syracuse University for 5 years some time ago. He also attended UNB. He also attended St. FX, where he did complete his education degree right in the middle of COVID when he graduated, so there was no graduation ceremonies. And he continues his education today, doing his master's while he is teaching. My daughter has attended St. Thomas University. She's attended Holland College, and it appears that she is again, one more time, going to continue her education through the University of New Brunswick. Very exciting. So, and I remember, Mr. Speaker, helping a relative out years ago when she was going to university. As she was going through high school, I remember her mom saying, well, my daughter won't be able to go to university because there's no money. And I said, yes, she can. There's all kinds of help for her. This was long before us here in their current plan, long before the free tuition that the previous government had put through. Probably around 2008, 2009. And her first year with me helping her with her opportunities, paid nothing in her first year. Everything was taken care of. It was amazing, based on income, based on bursaries that she got, scholarships that she got, and we were able to make it happen. So it was a great success story that, you know, regardless of her income at the time, she was able to get the help that she needed. So I want to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues from the Liberal opposition for bringing the matter of support for post-secondary students and tuition to the floor of the legislature for discussion, examination, and debate. Mr. Speaker, I find when considering things like suggestions and criticisms, it's always important to consider the source. For instance, if the opposition makes a suggestion, I'm interested to learn their history on the matter. If they should happen to launch a criticism in our direction, I want to know their track record. Often it takes some time and a little research, Mr. Speaker, but not on this motion. I know their record. Let's refresh our memories. A big event by the previous government was held up the hill on the UNB campus. I understand it was a catered affair with delicious, pricey refreshments to celebrate their announcement that as long as a student's family earned less than $60,000 per year, and not 1 penny more, they would not be charged to enroll in a New Brunswick public university or college. And Mr. Speaker, I stress public university, and I will come back to that later on. And it was celebrated by the potentially 3,000 to 7,000 students who might have been impacted, along with some advocates and some folks in Ivory Towers. It was not celebrated by over 50,000 others, Mr. Speaker. Remember where they got the money. They first eliminated a tuition tax rebate program that was being used by more than 10,000 New Brunswickers annually, providing them with an average rebate of $2,150. And Mr. Speaker, I remember during that time when that program was canceled, just one couple that comes to mind who both had graduated in the medical field and were benefiting from the promised tuition rebate because they went to work here in New Brunswick. You had to work here, pay taxes here in order to get that tuition rebate back. And they were so upset when that ended that they moved to Prince Edward Island. I also know of people who had made their decision on taking further education, knowing that the tuition rebate was going to help them as they continued to work here in New Brunswick. They had no intentions of leaving. They want to work here, live here, pay taxes here. They love our province. But it was sad because part of their financial plan in taking that additional education was that promised tuition rebate that all of a sudden the carpet was whipped out under their feet. Then, Mr. Speaker, they followed the Trudeau Liberals in eliminating the education and tuition tax credits from a family's income taxes. On average, another $2,000 per household was taken away from everyone, immediately impacting 42,000 people. So, right off the bat, the members opposite had taken away more than $31 million in benefits that were available to everyone, Mr. Speaker, and replaced it with a potential $25 million in benefits only available to a small proportion of students. Some deal for some. Of course, it was criticized. It was widely criticized, Mr. Speaker. Why would anyone applaud cutting the student aid budget by 20%? Mr. Speaker, that's just for openers. Furthermore, you only got the assistance if you attended a short list of public colleges and universities. If you were one of 800 students studying at Crandall University, you didn't qualify. If you were one of the hundreds going to a private college like Eastern or Olton's, tough luck. Many of you in the room are aware, because I've talked about it a lot, for 20 years I worked with local independent business owners here in the greater Fredericton area. Several of those business owners were independently owned post-secondary education institutions. And when I sat down with those business owners, Mr. Speaker, they were falling off the cliff. How do they compete with that? Who, as a student, would choose to pay for their post-secondary education institution at a local independently owned college like Crandall, like Eastern, like Olton? Why wouldn't you take it for free and go to a publicly funded university? So what always struck me, Mr. Speaker, when this was all happening, is the independent colleges pay the taxes to help pay for the publicly funded universities. So not only are they not getting the business, but they're paying the taxes to fund their opposition, their competition. I don't understand how any government can actually think that way and do that. This government, this PC government, would never, ever pit one business against another in that unfair competition, Mr. Speaker. It just makes no sense at all. So I was very excited back in 2018-19 when we were addressing this and bringing some fairness back in to that situation. On top of this, Mr. Speaker, if a student's dream was to study outside of New Brunswick and bring back new knowledge and ideas, they were also shut out of this program. With the old assistance programs, you could travel the world and still get benefits as long as you came back and helped us build up our province. That is an important point. The old programs rewarded people who stayed in New Brunswick and paid into our tax system. This new Liberal program gave free education away and then allowed those same students to leave the day after they graduated, never to return. And as for the Liberals' stated goal of encouraging more international students to choose our province and help increase our population, this announcement did nothing for them. If you are shocked by this information, please also consider the previous Liberal government never had a public conversation with students, with families, with academics, or taxpayers about this surprise shift. Consider the cost of these Liberal decisions. Previously, if you were a two-income family with decent jobs and you were planning on your only child starting at UNB in the fall, you were facing a $24,000 tuition bill over 4 years. But you could also plan on about $8,000 off your taxes over the same period from the Education and Tuition Tax Credit Program. Also, you can count on $12,000 of the total coming back to your son or daughter in future tax rebates. More importantly, there have been 10 years of stable, predictable student aid programs as part of a family's calculations. Worth the investment and the sacrifice, right? But then, suddenly, a new deal from the Liberal government, under which Family A, whose total income was $59,000, suddenly got a windfall because now the tuition bill is $0. Give me a yippee, Margaret. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say your name. From my colleague MLA. An extra $24,000 in their budget over the next 4 years. Family B, whose total income was slightly higher than at $61,000, suddenly got hit with a double whammy. No more education tax credits and no more tuition rebates for their children. Now, they had to scramble to find an extra $20,000, all because of Liberal government decisions. How was that fair? Of course it was not. Mr. Speaker, I remember we all read the paper, we see the political cartoons when we turn those pages, and I'll never forget it. I probably have it at home in my office. And it was a political cartoon right after this free tuition rebate came out, and it was a picture of a man, professional, in a suit, sitting at a desk in front of his boss saying, I'm here to see if I can get a salary reduction. Because, I might be making $61,000 a year. So if you can reduce my salary, boss, I'd really appreciate that. None of this makes any sense. These changes came too extreme, Mr. Speaker, and too fast. People plan and budget for a child's education over a decade or more. In less than 14 months, the Liberals took away $20,000 in benefits from many, many New Brunswick families. Double that if folks had 2 children in post-secondary. Triple those amounts for 3 kids. It adds up fast, doesn't it? How were families supposed to make that money up in such a short period of time? Why didn't the previous government at least spread the changes out over 4 or 5 years? An irresponsible and reckless choice made without wide consultation and announced 4 months before the start of the school year, Mr. Speaker. There you have the track record of the source of this motion. Let us now consider the action of our government. Our decision to eliminate student loan interest benefits, benefits 65,000 New Brunswick borrowers. Eliminating interest had been requested by the students. I would echo our post-secondary education minister who outlined how there are many forms of support available to post-secondary students. With one application, a student is considered for grants, bursaries, and loans that are available from both the provincial and federal governments. There is other support available through Working New Brunswick that students may be eligible for as well. We encourage them to speak with someone at one of the 19 locations across the province. And just as a reminder, Mr. Speaker, Working New Brunswick services are available to New Brunswick employers and job seekers looking for support. Any New Brunswick employer, regardless the size, that has human resource challenges, including recruitment, retention, and training, can reach out to Working New Brunswick for support through a workforce consultant. Better keep my eye on the clock. And any New Brunswicker looking for career or training opportunities can connect with a Working New Brunswick employment counselor to get started towards your employment goals. And I will say my daughter recently did reach out to Working New Brunswick. They were amazing to deal with. Any information she wanted on student loans, any help at all, it was all there to help her out. So, Mr. Speaker, our government has proven that making post-secondary education accessible and affordable is a top priority, and there is help available for a majority of our students. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.